All right, here we go, guys. Picking up on Mexico notes part 2. Okay. So, first we're going to talk about Mexico's population. Okay. Mexico's population increased a lot after World War II. That's in part to a few different things. We had some people who were displaced from European countries that moved to the Mexico area, mostly Europeans, right? So you have some Chinese, you have some Jewish people that live there. You have all different cultures that have moved into this region. Okay, but the majority of those people are still what we call mestizo. Do you guys know what mestizo means? Anybody want to take a guess? So mestizo is really the mix of Spanish and native cultures there. Okay, so your Mayan or Aztec heritage, right, mixed with Spanish. That's what we call mestizo. Okay, and just like in North America, we call ourselves Americans, right? They consider themselves Mexicans, regardless of their um, cultural background. They still consider themselves people of the nation of Mexico, right? So they consider themselves to be Mexicans. So Mexican is not necessarily well, it's kind of funny. It's not really a race. Does that make sense? You're either a mix of Spanish and Mestizo or Mayan or, you know what I mean? And it's kind of funny because we, here in North America, we kind of consider people to be Mexican when in fact, there's people from the Mexican nation, but it's not really necessarily a race of people. That's a mix of or a blend of a couple of different cultural backgrounds. So just like in the US, we have a mix, right? All of us come from different cultural backgrounds. So it's kind of a mixing pot, right? So unfortunately for Mexico, their distribution of wealth hasn't been real even. As we kind of touched on yesterday, their economics have been controlled politically because people of power, um, presidents, things like that, have generally not spread that wealth out among their entire nation. They've kind of kept that wealth in larger portions of the country where it needed the most. Okay, for infrastructure and things like that. We talked about some of the people wanting to increase like the ownership of farmland and things like that. That's still a battle that's kind of going on today, even. And some of that has to do with the geography of the state. Some of that has to do with the types of businesses that they have, right? Manufacturing and what kind of import and export goods they make and sell. Okay, so here's a little map here that just kind of shows the percentage of poverty based on some of these areas. Okay, and if you look at the bottom of that map there where it's dark green, you'll see that that is probably the most impoverished area. So that is around 62.4% to 75% of those people are what you would consider below the poverty level. Okay, so they're very poor in those regions. Okay, and that's because there's not a lot of major cities in those areas. Okay, there's not a lot of major manufacturing. All right, and it's a tough area to live in. It's a tough region to be in. Okay, so as the color tends to get a little bit lighter, we see those are areas that have fewer poor people in those regions. Okay, so you can see how it kind of lightens up as you move northward. All right, and that's because a lot of those relationships between the U.S. and Mexico, such as people going to destinations, vacationing, and things like that. Those are areas that people visit more frequently, and those are areas where there's tends to be more manufacturing, more plants for like cars and different things like that. Okay, so when you guys see something that's made in Mexico, what does it usually say on it? Because if you buy something at the dollar stores, it probably says made in China or made in Taiwan. What does it say when it comes from Mexico? Any idea? Have you ever heard hecho in Mexico? Essentially is made in Mexico, right? Okay. So that's what we see a lot of the time. All right. So moving on, here is a picture of a manufacturing plant. They assemble a lot of these cars in Mexico. There are tons and tons of automotive manufacturing plants down there. And part of the reason for this is because of what we call NAFTA, a North American Free Trade Agreement. Okay. Another reason for that is because automotive makers have found that it's much easier, much cheaper to assemble cars in Mexico than it is, say, if you're a car manufacturer in China, okay, and you want to get your cars to the United States. It's much easier to put them together in Mexico. So you send the different parts from different places in the world where they're made, and then they're all assembled in Mexico. And then it's actually much more affordable because they don't have to pay their workers as much there. Okay. And that's one way Mexico has actually kind of grown over the last few decades, is by making more of these assembly plants, things like that. I'm big into Volkswagens, and for a long time, Volkswagen had all their manufacturing down there until about, I think, 1987 is when they stopped making the old Volkswagen Bugs, the Beetles, right? So if you go down there, you'll still see lots of Volkswagen Beetles running around, punch buggies, right? But so in recent years, the building of foreign-owned factories and plants in some of Mexico's rural areas has helped draw the population away from Mexico City and redistribute some of the country's wealth. So if you guys will write that down, what's in yellow highlighted there. Okay. And then the North American Free Trade Agreement, or what we call NAFTA, was signed in 1994. That increased Mexico's financial ties to the United States and Canada. Okay, free trade means that we don't put a surcharge on things that we generally need from Mexico and that they need from us. So it's kind of an open way to make more of a global economic system. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of like taxes that we throw at them for some of those things that we import and export. Okay. Despite its problems, the Mexican economy, with its growing industrial base, abundant natural resources, and variety of service industry, remains important to Latin America. So Mexico is kind of a big connection between us and South America, not just physically, but for importing and exporting of goods, and continuing to carry out business relationships between the United States and South America. Okay. So I'll give you guys a second to write all of this down. All right, we doing okay? You guys are so quiet today. All right, here we go. All right, today, tourism is a major contributor to the Mexican economy. People flock to Mexico from all over the world to sample the country's cultural diversity, bask in the lush tropical settings, and take advantage of relatively low prices. US tourists constitute the majority of visitors to the country. In the past, tourists traveled mainly to Mexico City and the surrounding colonial towns of the Mesa Central. Unfortunately, the capital city's reputation has suffered due to social and environmental problems, notably high levels of air pollution and crime. Okay, so it used to be people used to go to Mexico City all the time. Now a lot of tourists go to the beaches of Mexico. So it's not unusual for people to go to Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, all these different beach resort type towns. Okay. Has anybody been to Puerto Vallarta? or Acapulco?
No,
No. Tig, have you haven't gone?
no, I've only been down to Mexico and I was in Juarez when I was probably 5 years old.
Oh, really? So I haven't ever been out of the country myself. So at least you got that in your pocket.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. So I'll give you guys a second to write these couple of things down.
I still remember Mr. Moore being down there when I was that young. My older brother and I were extremely blonde. People down in Juarez didn't see towheads like that, so they
Right.
were just touching our hair with amazement. Just surprised that hair could be that color.
Right. But it's funny, culturally, it's not unusual to see people of that mestizo descent that have that European look, right? So the red hair.
Yes,
Yeah, so I mean that's not unusual, but it would be unusual to see a mestizo or someone with blonde hair, right? So, or at least back in the day, right? Now I guess everybody uses hair product. So
yeah.
bleach your hair, right? But yeah, that's crazy. All right, guys, moving on. All right, Mexico's current government structure is one of democracy. Okay, so as the U.S., we have a democracy, right? Okay, ours is a republic, though, so it is by the people. Okay, um, in Mexico, the intent was to have a constitution, um, and unfortunately, their government has been monopolized by a single party. Okay, in the United States, we have two main parties, right? Okay, but in Mexico, they've had one party that has kind of monopolized or manipulated their system down there. Okay, and so what that's done is it's created an imbalance of power down there. Okay, now today their government has four different parties representing it, although they believe that um, the presidential or executive position, the president just has too much power, according to their constitution. So it becomes almost more like a monarchy in essence, where you have a king or someone that has um, maybe overreaching power, right? They make more important decisions than other people. So at least in the US, we try to keep that to a minimum. We have our different branches of government that have to agree on things, right? So not so much the case in Mexico. Okay, and it's created a lot of problems in the 70s and 80s. Okay, major issues with drugs, illegal drug trafficking, and things like that. A lot of the drugs that came into the United States came through Mexico, and that was a result of people in those higher positions in government allowing those kinds of things to happen. So in the 1980s, we had Ronald Reagan, who started or coined the phrase the war on drugs. Okay. And he really took the lead on trying to minimize the amount of illegal drugs and things that came into the US by putting pressure on the Mexican government. Okay. So the US really plays a big part in trying to help form Mexico's government into more of a democracy like ours, if that makes sense. Okay. And we still have a lot of business agreements with them. And, it's important for our economy as well that Mexico does well. So Mexico isn't super poor. They're actually one of the top 10 leading economies in the world. It's just that the distribution of wealth among the people has not been very good. It's not very even. Okay. All right. So some fun facts for you. Okay. The full name of Mexico is actually called the United Mexican States. Okay. You usually don't see that on a map. It usually says Mexico and that's it, right? But it's technically the United Mexican States. Okay. Their capital is Mexico City, which is considered a federal district. Okay. So Mexico City is like Washington, D.C. for us. Okay. Washington, D.C. doesn't sit inside of a state, right? Because it's considered a federal district. Well, that's how Mexico City is. Okay. And technically, it sits right in the center of what they call the state of Mexico. But it is not part of Mexico state. It's its own federal district. Okay. So large populations, the largest population is Mexico City with almost 9 million people. Okay, then you have Morales with 1.6 million, Guadalajara 1.6, and you guys kind of see how this goes down the line, but it's crazy to see how many people live in Mexico City compared to the rest of this country, right? So when it comes to industry, guess where most of their industry is? Mexico City, right? Okay. Comes most to what kind of power is held in their country. Most of the power is held in Mexico City. Okay. You guys know Mexico City was built right on top of Tenochtitlan, right? So since the Aztecs settled in Tenochtitlan, that's kind of become the capital up until now. So their total population, you're looking at about 103 million people, okay, as of 2005. I would guess it's probably around 104 million at this point. Okay. Mexican Independence Day is September 16th, 1810. That's when they pushed out the Spanish, right? One thing that's interesting, though, is that Spain didn't recognize that independence until September 27th, 1821. So their independence, depending on where you go in the world, might be considered something different, right? But that's when Mexico declared themselves an independent nation in 1810. And of course, their monetary unit or the money they use are pesos. Anybody have pesos at home? So I know we have, I think Daphne brought in some pesos a couple weeks ago, but they look really cool, really cool looking money, right?
They're kind of like quarters.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a quarter, right? The peso is actually worth less than the penny. Okay. But that's part of the reason that people like to go down to Mexico with American money, and you can buy things for pesos rather than dollars, right? And there's kind of an unspoken law of being able to barter with people, especially like street vendors and things like that. You can negotiate the price of something. So a lot of people don't usually pay full price for something. They don't ask how much it is, they barter. So you can talk them into getting a little better price on some of these things. All right. So the three colors of Mexico's flag hold deep significance for the country and its citizens. Okay, green represents hope and victory. White stands for the purity of Mexican ideals. And red on their flag reminds them of the bloodshed and of their nation's heroes as they struggled to become an independent nation. Okay. The main emblem on their flag is, of course, the Aztec symbol, right? The eagle holding the snake. Okay. And it follows the legend of the Aztecs. Okay, so you guys are familiar with that, right? And the reason they followed that eagle was because of their god Huitzilopochtli, right? All right. Hopefully you guys got that written down. Let me know if I'm going too fast for you. All right. All right. Mexico is the third largest country in Latin America after Brazil and Argentina. At the beginning of the 21st century, their population surpassed 100 million. Like I said, today it's probably around 104 million. Okay. Mexico has the largest population of Spanish speakers in the world. Okay. With almost 25 million residents, Mexico City is one of the most populated metropolitan areas in the entire world. So when we look at Mexico City and the state of Mexico, 25 million people living there is a lot of people. And then Mexico has the world's second highest number of Catholics. Okay. Brazil has the most Catholics, but Mexico has the second highest number of Catholics. So it's kind of interesting when you look at the Catholic religion in Mexico, because it was brought in by the Spanish, right? The Spanish are the ones that spread the Catholic religion in Mexico. But it's funny, when they pushed out the Spanish, there were some people that kind of renounced the Catholic religion as well. So it's interesting that it's still one of the second most highest number of Catholics in the world, when there were so many people that disliked Catholic religion because of the Spanish. Does that make sense? Kind of interesting. So in Mexico, you may see, and in Brazil, you may see a different interpretation of the Virgin Mary, right? And for Europeans, they kind of renounce that. And so it's interesting to see the take on Catholic religion in Mexico and in South America compared to European Catholics. A little different, as are many religions throughout the world. All right. Hopefully you guys got these couple of items written down. All right. At nearly 2,000 miles, the border between Mexico and the United States is the second longest in the world, after the border between the US and Canada. Okay. So the two longest national borders are American borders, US and Canada, and then the US and Mexico. The Mexican border is nearly 2,000 miles long. So if we're really going to put a wall up, that's a long way to build a wall, isn't it? I think that's why it hasn't quite happened yet. In that sense.
It's too mountainous too. There's,
Yeah,
when you go down by Tucson around Nogales, how you gonna put them, how you gonna put a wall in that area?
right. It's never going to happen. All right. Mexicans comprise the largest group of legal immigrants in the United States. Okay. So people that have immigrated here, the biggest number of people who've immigrated here are legal Mexicans, not illegal, legal Mexicans. Okay. And then Mexico is located in an area known as the Pacific Ring of Fire. So, along that western coast, Mexico has many volcanoes. Okay. Part of the reason for that is because of the tectonic plates that line up right along Mexico's western coast, right? So lots and lots of active volcanoes. Now, one thing that you guys might find interesting is that Mexico actually typically suffers the most natural disasters of any country in the world. So we're talking hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes. Okay. Mexico, throughout the entire eastern and western coast, usually deals with a large occurrence of these natural disasters every year. Okay. You don't see it in the news all the time, but there are so many active volcanoes down there. So many times when we see on the news that it's hurricane season and it's coming towards Florida and the eastern coast, but many times those storms really impact Mexico, especially on the east coast. All right. Give you guys a second, make sure you got that written down. All right. So let's talk a little bit about those mountain ranges and some of the major features of geography in Mexico. Okay. Obviously, we have the Central Plateau. This is really a desert like area. Okay. This is how I think Mexico is typically depicted in movies, things like that. All right. Then you have the Sierra Madre Mountains. You have three different sets of mountains that kind of come together. You have the Sierra Madre Oriental in the east, the Sierra Madre Occidental in the west, and then towards the south, you have the Sierra Madre del Sur. Okay, if you guys look at that map, you can see the city of Mexico City. You can see the city of Puebla, part of Vallarta. And then if you go up the west coast and look, you see they have the Gulf of California. Okay. And then to the left of the Gulf of California is a large peninsula called Baja Peninsula. Okay. Although there's a lot of resorts and things like that on the Baja Peninsula, it's actually one of the least populated areas of Mexico. So you've got Cabo San Lucas down there on the Baja Peninsula, Tijuana, which is right across the border from San Diego. Okay, Nogales, as Mr. Shornack was mentioning, south of Tucson, Arizona. And you've got El Paso, Texas, right at the border with Juarez, right? So it's a really diverse area. And then of course we have on the Mexico or the Gulf of Mexico side, you have the Yucatan Peninsula, which is where we know the Mayans lived in that region, right? So lots of places to go. And you might recognize some of these: Acapulco, Cozumel. You've probably heard of these places before, probably never seen them. Cancun, Playa del Carmen. These are real common vacation destinations. All right, guys, moving on to my favorite part. Mexican food. Absolutely. I was thinking about this earlier and I was thinking, man, I really want to go get some Adolfo's, but I didn't. So since I'm quarantined.
Don't worry, Mexican food's my favorite too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
am Mexican, so I get to eat it.
Oh yeah. It's the best, right?
Everybody.
So there's this big thing about Mexican food versus what we call Tex-Mex. And it's kind of funny, but let's say you guys go to Chicago or New York and you go to get Mexican food. What do you think you'll be eating?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Exactly. Okay. So it's funny. I know people that come to Colorado and say, man, I want some really good, authentic Mexican food. And I hate to tell them, but a lot of what we have here in Colorado isn't really authentic. A lot of it's what we call Tex-Mex. Okay. So there is a big difference, especially if you come from Mexico. They don't use like white flour tortillas for tacos. Like if you got a soft taco at Taco Bell, it'd be in a white flour tortilla, right? They don't consider that a taco. They go, nah, we use those for burritos, man. What are you doing? Right? They don't put a ton of yellow cheese on things. So if you see something with a lot of yellow cheese on it, that's pretty much Tex-Mex. Okay, what we consider Tex-Mex. Green chili is not necessarily a thing in Mexico. Okay, that's more of a New Mexico kind of thing, right? So I wanted to share with you guys this little video. I thought it was kind of entertaining, but these are real Mexican people eating Taco Bell for the first time. And it's pretty interesting to see what they have to say about Taco Bell. All right. So I'm going to play that for you real quick.
I don't think it's gonna be close to the
Whoop.
Mexican food whatsoever.
¿Quiere saber qué es lo que espera cuando pruebe esta comida?
Pues
Let me expand it. Here we go.
the Mexican food whatsoever.
¿Quiere saber qué es lo que espera cuando pruebe esta comida?
Pues a mí no me gusta, la mera verdad, que tenga un sabor casero.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a taco whatsoever.
No se antoja.
To me it does.
Se ve rico.
Looks like a salad.
¿No le da ganas de comérselo?
No. A taco isn't usually in a flour tortilla. I mean, it comes in corn.
Está bueno. No tiene chiste.
No sabe nada. ¿O?
Es una versión americana, pero tiene buen sabor. No, no tiene cebolla.
Pues no sé, ¿qué es eso?
Lechuga.
¿Comerías otra vez?
Sí.
En México sí hacen burritos o no. ¿Son
No.
auténticos? No,
No.
¿verdad?
I mean, it looks like your basic burrito. Beans, rice, chicken, guacamole.
Y mucho queso.
Why is the rice white?
Ya no me convence, pero con una muy buena hambre, pero está bueno. No, yo mejor me camino a Quintaco.
Pero que ve algo diferente en la tortilla. En el...
algo bueno, la tortilla.
¿Sí?
Ujú.
La tortilla es hecha de Doritos.
Sí, no está bueno, está muy salado, muy seco. No tiene nada de taco.
I can totally eat some of these.
I don't know if this is mayonnaise or sour cream.
Yeah, I can't even tell
no
the
one-
difference. It's like mayonnaise.
Yo iría y pediría una tortilla nomás con crema y ya,
No, no, no.
sin nada dentro. Pues se me hace raro, pero pues es un sabor que a todos les
Siendo
gusta.
Why are you making our food, you know, into this?
¿Y qué tal las tapitas adentro?
Le da mucho sabor.
The Fritos, those do give them a little different kind of taste.
Y es una explosión de sabor.
¿Ha probado algo así?
No.
The cheese looks like the fake cheese.
¿Probarlo?
A ver, pruébalo.
Sí. Ándale, a lo mejor te gusta y te lo avientas.
I don't know how people think this is good because it's not.
Y ¿eso no es algo que usted inventaría en su casa? ¿Meter
Bueno,
un taco adentro de una gordita?
pues no lo sabía, pero a lo mejor.
No podría describir lo que acabo de probar porque no es la comida mexicana.
Mucho sabor diferente. No se las recomiendo. Pues sabemos tantos latinos aquí que hay veces sí queremos entrar a Taco Bell. Y ya probando, yo no voy a, yo no voy a regresar, la verdad.
I thought you were sleeping for a second. Vamos a verlo.
Ya le cayó de peso el Taco Bell.
That's kind of funny, right? So consensus there, I think, is most of those people from Mexico are not impressed with Taco Bell. Right. So first time I went to Florida and tried to order a green burrito at Taco Bell, they were like, "What are you talking about?" Right? They had no idea what I was talking about. So it depends on where you go, right? Tastes are different, food is different. Has anyone ever heard of lengua? Have you ever tried it?
Tonga.
How about pozole?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Baca makes it like 2 or 3 times a year here.
right? Yeah, it's kind of awesome. So lengua, if you've never had it, that's actually cow tongue. But the way that they cook it, it kind of tastes like roast beef. It's actually really good. So menudo is another one that we commonly hear. Anybody ever eat menudo?
Well, let's take that word back to language arts real quick.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah.
Why? This is why when we talk about being linguistic and lingo with, yes, when you know the lingo of something, you know its tongue. As they're saying is you know how to talk the way they talk. Hence, that's where we get the word, where, like you said, lingo comes from tongue. It means you know the lingo, the linguistics.
Yes. So menudo is actually like a soup, and the meat in there is cow's stomach.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'll say that. Yeah. But everywhere you go in the world, there's different things you can try. I mean, some people eat calamari, which I think is a little too rubbery for me, but that's squid. Okay.
Monkey brains.
Yeah. Monkey brains, right? All kinds of different things, right?
Sheep, that is a sheep stomachs and guts and entrails.
Yeah. So, what is it? Haggis. Haggis in Scotland
That's
is sheep's stomach. It's stuffed sheep's stomach, and to me, it doesn't taste very good. But some people have a taste for it, right? I guess if you grow up eating that
Cow
stuff.
hearts.
Do they eat hearts?
Cow heart.
Oh, I'm sure they make it in some kind of dish. I'm sure, but I don't know if they do that in Mexico. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, guys. It's funny, but you never know if you're gonna like something until you actually try it. So as you get older, you get a little more variety in the things that you like to eat. But I know last year I had some kids that go down to Mexico all the time, and that's the kind of food they're used to eating. So for them, cow tongue, that's a good meal, right? That's kind of a different thing to eat, but yeah, they love it. So yeah, guys, so that's gonna do it for today. Okay. For those of you that have not yet turned in your presentations, please get those turned in. If you turned in the paper but you haven't sent your video of your presentation to me, I gave you credit for your paper but not the presentation yet. Okay. And make sure you get those taken care of tonight. Okay. Because a lot of you guys have zeros in there. So I don't want you to finish out with zeros in the grade book. Okay. So good job today, guys. I hope you have an amazing weekend. You got about 8-9 minutes till the bell rings, and thank Mr. Shornack for helping me out this week.
We're doing the same next week, buddy.
All right, we'll see you later. Have a good day, guys.
You too. Bye.
Bye, Mr.
Bye.
Have a great day on